Thank you, Grover. And without further ado, I'd now like to ask Monika Ciesielka, our Thomas Jefferson Fellow and author of this year's report, to share our findings with you. Monika holds a master's degree in international relations from the Warsaw School of Economics in Poland. She has an extensive background in econometrics, international economics, foreign policy, management, public policy, public and social policies and history, and is the co-author of the study GDP Growth Convergence in the EU accession countries, which was presented at the 3rd International Meeting on Economic Cycles in Spain in 2004. Monika?
Thank you, Sandra. Just to reiterate, Cost of Government Day is the day of the calendar year on which the average American worker has earned enough gross income to pay off his or her share of the spending and regulatory burden imposed by the government on federal, state, and local levels. This year, the Cost of Government Day falls on August the 12th, which is 26 days later, almost a month, than in 2008. The average American has to therefore work 224 days to pay off his or her share of the government burden. In other words, the cost of government consumes 61.34% of national income. In 2009, we have to work additional 43 days to pay for the cost of government when compared to 2000, when the cost of government was June the 29th. In fact, as you can see on the chart, between 1977 and 2008, the cost of government day has never fallen later than July 20th in 1982. The driving factor behind the very late cost of government day is that all the cost of government factors, federal spending, state and local spending, and regulations are now improving faster than the national income, which in fact shrunk as a result of the financial crisis in 2008. This year we have expanded the scope of the Cost of Government Day report to include a number of case studies. The purpose of the case studies is to explore the possible effects implementation of certain policies would have or has had on the 2009 Cost of Government. These are the Troubled Asset Relief Program, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, so-called stimulus, cap and trade, tax deferral and foreign tax credit, value-added tax, and Davis-Bacon Act. And the report we also included guest case studies from California by one of our panelists, Assemblyman Chuck DeVore, and from New Jersey by Assemblyman Jay Weber. On this chart, you can see the components of this year's Cost of Government Day. The largest one, of course, is federal spending. The average American worker has to labor 111 days to pay for the costs connected with federal spending, which is now consuming 30% of national income. As you can see on this chart, this is a significant leap compared to 90 days in 2008. In 2009, federal spending has expanded by almost $1 trillion, mostly due to the Troubled Asset Relief Program and the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009 passed under the guise of economic stimulus. To make things worse, and in spite of the promises to the contrary, through TARP and stimulus, taxpayers' money is being spent with little oversight or transparency and will most possibly bring no long-term positive effects. The original purpose of TARP was abandoned. Instead of purchasing toxic assets, the Treasury is now bailing out failing unionized automakers and providing financial assistance to insurance companies. What's troublesome is the fact that the first banks to receive TARP funds were in fact pressured into accepting them, and that even repaid funds could likely be distributed under the TARP program perpetually, as remarked by the Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner. The so-called stimulus package is of course doing its part in this spending extravaganza. Now, more than ever in the recent US history, we're looking at the ongoing expansion of the reach of the federal government into the free market. Partial nationalization of large parts of the financial sector and some branches of the industry might be a doomsday scenario, but looking at what's happening right now, it's certainly a possible one. We have calculated, sorry about that. We have calculated that had Congress not passed the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008 that created TARP, Cost of Government Day would have fallen on July 25th. That means that it would have been 18 days earlier. Cost of Government Day 2009 would fall about 10 days earlier if not for the expenditures connected with the so-called stimulus. Keep in mind that in our calculations we only use the 2009 expenditures connected with the package. The appropriations for the coming years will certainly be factored in future Cost of Government Day calculations. On average, in 2009, American worker must labor 49 days to pay for state and local government expenditures. This compares to 42.5 days in 1999 and 47 days in 2008. This means that in the last 10 years, the state and local spending has grown by almost 14% in relation to national income. In 2009, the average worker must labor 65 days to cover the cost of government regulation. This compares to 61.1 days last year, reflecting a rapid growth in regulatory costs in relation to national income. In view of the financial crisis, there has been a lot of talk about re-regulation of the financial sector. In June, the President unveiled a plan pertaining to rules governing the financial system. It is the most extensive revision of the financial regulatory system since the 1930s and will pose a great threat to private financial institutions and the free market. An interesting and astounding number, 24 million, that's how many people in total are employed by the US government on federal, state, and local levels. Out of that, over 4.2 million are federal employees, with 2.7 million working for the executive branch. President Obama's 2010 budget calls for hiring of several 100,000 more federal employees in the next 4 years. Only between 2009 and 2010, the federal workforce is expected to grow by over 140,000. In light of this increase, ATRF has calculated how much it will cost taxpayers to hire each of these employees over a 40-year working career. It turns out that if we take an employee in the middle of the federal pay scale and a representative one, the cost amounts to 4.27 million. As far as the state-by-state breakdown for cost of government day, there are 35 states that have their cost of government day earlier than the national day. The first position in our ranking, as last year, holds Alaska, with Louisiana and Mississippi not far behind. However, in 15 states and District of Columbia, the cost of government day falls either on August the 12th or later, in some cases much later. As in previous years, the latest cost of government day is in Connecticut, with the average worker totaling all the way until September the 7th. The dubious honor of second place is held by New Jersey, with cost of government day now falling in September the 6th. New York is right behind on August the 31st. For some time now, states have not been living within their means. In 2009, 46 states are facing significant budget gaps. One of the examples is California, 47 in our ranking, a state that since 1991 has expanded its spending by 300%. One of the issues discussed in our report is the interstate migration and how it is affected by the tax burden. We have calculated that the highest tax burden states lost around 441,000 residents in 2007 alone. These migrants took with them $12.8 billion of net adjusted income. Between 1997 and 2007, the same states experienced a net loss of over 3 million residents and $82 billion of income. At the same time, the 10 states with the lowest tax burden gained around 2.3 million residents and $88.7 billion in income. What's more, in 2007 alone, these 10 states had immigration of over 240,000 and 11 billion, and cumulative real income gain of $11 billion. Thank you for your attention.